KSP2's newest update for science is finally here, and it is big, adding re-entry heating, new parts, missions and contracts, a new science mode, and so much more. In this series of mine, I'll be aiming to unlock the entire tech tree and unlock every single part in the game. We'll see all of the new features and the improvements of the game, and see if this update truly was what KSP2 needed all along. First thing to do is begin a new campaign, and as you can see here, there is now 2 game mode options. There is Sandbox, and there is the new Exploration mode. Now after professionally naming my save, we can jump in and see the new update. Now zooming out on the KSC here, we now have 2 more options, the R&D Center or Research and Development, and the Mission Control. Now I first jumped into the Mission Control building, and already I have my first objective. Launch a rocket from Kerbin and achieve an altitude of at least 10 kilometers. Now this will award me with 25 science points, which I can use to get more parts. Now I've been very excited for this update, basically ever since it was announced, so I was very keen to get something in the air. Now as we start in the VAB, we only have a few parts at our disposal, so after building a small rocket, let's get to the launch pad. Now the space program's first rocket, which I named Firecracker, probably not a good naming choice, is standing on the pad ready to launch. After ascending a little longer, we easily pass our goal of 10 kilometers above sea level, and yeah, I actually did have a bit more fuel left, but I didn't really want to go much higher because, well, I don't have heat shields unlocked yet. But then I found another cool feature. There's this science button right here, and it essentially flashes when you have the opportunity to do science experiments, which is very useful. So after doing a crew observation from the high atmosphere, I gained a total of 4 science points. After burning through the rest of my fuel and staging the capsule, we reached a final altitude of 57 kilometers. As we descend back down to the green and blue ball, we don't really have to worry about atmospheric heating, as we aren't really going that fast at all. As we start to get closer to the surface, we can just deploy that parachute on top and slow Jeb down to a safe landing speed. After recovering the vessel, I went back to Mission Control to claim my reward for completing the mission. From this first flight, I now have enough science points to unlock some new parts from the tech tree. Going back to Mission Control, I now have a new mission available. Launch a rocket above the atmosphere and into space. Based on the fact that in our previous flight we were only 15 kilometers below space, I think this is certainly achievable. And with that, Firecracker 2 stands ready on the launch pad. After totally not accidentally staging on the first attempt before completing the science experiments, I was ready to launch. As we ascend through the atmosphere, we can do many different science experiments through the new part I recently unlocked, the Science Junior, which is that little part up there. But then of course, this still wouldn't be a KSP2 video without some kind of bug. And my trajectory just wasn't showing up on the map screen, which isn't really much of a problem for this mission, but yeah, bugs certainly still exist. But if you look down at that apoapsis, we are going to be reaching space. A little coasting later, we are now above Kerbin's atmosphere, making Bob Kerbin the first Kerbal in space. And with that, Bob Kerbin is safely back on Kerbin. Now there's also a new animation for gathering surface samples, which you can see here, which is pretty cool. After recovering the vessel and heading back to Mission Control, you can see that I have completed the mission objective and gained 50 science points. And I now have 2 new missions available: launch a rocket and orbit Kerbin, and land a vessel in the ocean. And I think I can achieve both of these missions in one flight. After getting literally all the new parts I could get from the R&D Center, I was ready to build my very first orbital rocket, Firecracker 3. now that our pilot Jebediah Kerman is inside the rocket, he's ready to make history. Now, it was here when I ran into a little bit of a problem. And no, not just the trajectory bug. Essentially, as you can see, I have no fuel left in my second stage. However, there is still some left in those RCS monopropellant tanks, which left me two options here. One, just crash back into the surface of Kerbin and not achieve the mission, or use the RCS thrusters, which are tiny by the way, to see if they can propel us the rest of the way to orbit. And as you can see, eventually we did actually achieve orbital velocity, making our pilot Jebediah the first Kerbal to orbit the planet Kerbin. Now all that's left to do is get back home. Now to re-enter the atmosphere, we need to be going a lot slower, so we basically just have to burn backwards using our RCS thrusters, and we actually still have a surprising amount of fuel left in them. And after a very long time, we are ready to descend to Kerbin. After landing Jeb safely back on Kerbin and completing both of the mission objectives, I now have a total of 153 science points. After spending all of my science points on new parts, building a massive rocket, and seeing this new mission in the mission control, I think we set our eyes on the moon. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next episode.